got a question for you. You like zombies? So I realized that outside of a starter deck, I don't think I've actually done a zombie tribal deck for the channel. And, you know, I do like Kindred strategies. They're not the most unique things on the planet, but they are still very, very fun baselines that you can basically kind of build whatever you want out of. So let's go ahead and take a crack at building Zul Ashur Lich Lord, one of the new zombie commanders out of Foundations. Zul Ashur Lich Lord is a black and 1 zombie warlock commander. He's got a small protective ability with a ward trigger, and whenever you want, you can cast a zombie creature from your graveyard, as long as it doesn't break timing restrictions. But you can only do that once per turn, because it is locked to a tap trigger. So this means what we are going to want to use is plenty of zombies that like being in the graveyard to reanimate, or zombies that are low enough mana that we can weave their reanimations in with various other effects, and we want plenty of ways to get zombies into the graveyard. We also need a guaranteed way to close out the game, which is one of the issues we run into with a lot of typal decks. People just kind of shove their favorite cards in and don't actually do anything to win the game, and then wonder why their deck's not working. So let's go ahead and start out with some win-conny stuff. This is going to be the zombie burn package. We are going to try to have zombies burn our opponents to death with various means. First, we have Fell Stinger. Whenever it exploits a creature, target player draws 2 cards and loses 2 life. We can use this to draw cards for our own self, or to snipe a player out of the game if they are incredibly low. We are able to repeat this over and over again, so think of this as a draw card first and a burn card afterwards. We then have a Loyal Subordinate, which it says at the beginning of combat on our turn, we can cause every opponent to lose 3 life if our commander is out. Make sure this is out on the board at all times to put a clock on our opponents. Then we have Vindictive Lich. When this card touches the battlefield, or when it dies rather, we get to choose 1 or more, and each mode must target a different player. We can make an opponent sack a creature, we can make an opponent discard 2 cards, and we can make an opponent lose 2 life. A really fun thing to do is to have the Vindictive Lich out, reanimate the Fell Stinger, drop it onto the board, and immediately exploit the Vindictive Lich, making an opponent lose 5 life, and making another opponent discard 2 cards, and then making another opponent lose a creature. Make Voltron players lose their creature, make people who are low on cards discard their cards so they go down to nothing, and if you have an opponent who is at 7 life, combining these 2 cards together will basically automatically take that player out of the game, making them take 2 damage from the Fell Stinger, and then another 5 from the Vindictive Lich. Calculating Lich says whenever a creature attacks one of our opponents, they will lose 1 life. So if we swing with an army of tokens, now suddenly our opponents are burning to death very, very quickly. Shepherd of Rot says that each player will lose 1 life for every zombie in play. This does count us as well, so do be very, very careful when playing this. And then we have the Vengeful Dead, which says whenever it or another zombie dies, every opponent will lose 1 life. So we're not quite an Aristocrats deck, but we are going to be winning with a tried and true Aristocrats-ish strategy. We also want to make sure that our zombies are well cared for, so we're going to run 6 ways to Anthem and Lord out abilities and power onto our zombies, beginning with Liliana's Devotee. This gives all of our zombies 1/0, and at the beginning of our end step, if any creature died this turn, we can pay 2 mana to make a zombie creature token. Hancock Ghoulish Mayor says every other creature we control that is a zombie or a mutant gets +X/+X, where X is the number of counters on Hancock. And of course, he has Undying, so if we have him die, we can bring him back with a counter on him already. Graph Harvest says all of our zombies get Menace, and we can also exile a creature from our graveyard to make a zombie token. Then Liliana's Mastery gives all of our zombies +1/+1 and makes 2 zombie tokens when it comes onto the board. Lord of the Accursed gives all of our zombies +1/+1 and the ability to grant all of our zombies Menace for an easy combat step. Then we have Cemetery Reaper, which gives all of our zombies +1/+1 and the ability to exile a creature from our graveyard to make a zombie token. Speaking of zombie tokens, let's also go ahead and add a few extra ways to make zombie tokens in this deck, beginning with Army of the Damned. This makes us 13 zombie tokens when we play it, with the benefit of being able to cast it from the graveyard in the event that we accidentally self-mill it. Then we have Open the Graves, which says anytime a non-token creature we control dies, we make a 2/2 black zombie creature token. Rise of the Dreadmarn creates X black creature zombie creature tokens, where X is the number of non-token creatures we've had die this turn, or, anybody's had die this turn. This casts at instant speed, and it can be foretold so that we can easily weave this in with board wipes. Then we have Tormod the Desecrator. Whenever one or more cards leaves your graveyard, create a tapped 2/2 black zombie creature token. Liliana Death's Majesty says we can create a black zombie creature token when we mill 2 cards and add a loyalty to her. We can also reanimate a creature from the grave and give it the zombie type, or blow up all zombies. Then we have Liliana's Reaver, which says that when it deals combat damage to a player, that player discards a card, and then we create a 2/2 black zombie creature token. We also need some solid ways to mill ourselves to get zombies into the graveyard, so we've got a Stitcher's Supplier right here that mills 3 cards whenever it comes onto the battlefield or dies. Violent Tumor allows us to tutor any card in the deck and throw it into the graveyard. Then we have Mire Triton, which says that when it enters the battlefield, we mill 2 cards and gain 2 life. Then we have the Crow of Dark Tidings. When it enters the battlefield or dies, we put the top 2 cards of our library right into our graveyard. And it would not be a zombie deck without a plethora of ways to recur cards from our graveyard, not just with our commander. So we have Corpse Churn, which lets us mill 3 and then return a creature from our graveyard to our hand. Gravespawn Sovereign lets us tap 5 untapped zombies to reanimate any creature from our graveyard. Undead Butler, when it dies, we get to exile it, take any creature from our graveyard, put it in our hand. It also mills us when it drops onto the board. Dread Slaver says whenever a creature dealt damage by it dies, we return that card to the battlefield on our board, meaning this is recursion for our opponent's cards. Phyrexian Delver allows us to reanimate any card from the graveyard at the cost of life. Victimize lets us sacrifice a creature to revive 2 creatures from our grave. Dread Return revives a creature from our grave, but also lets us sacrifice 3 creatures to flash it back. Zombie Apocalypse returns all zombie creatures from the graveyard to the battlefield and then blows up all humans. Then we have the Scourge of Neltoth, which is a 6/6 zombie dragon that we can reanimate from the graveyard for 2 mana, as long as we are willing to sacrifice 2 creatures, usually tokens, to make up for that cost. We will also be running 1 Grey Merchant of Asphodel as a win condition, as it lets every opponent take X damage, where X is our devotion to black, and then we gain X life. And I keep using loss of life and damage as an interchangeable thing, but it's not the same. It's loss of life, not actually damage. But just hear me out. Gary pops onto the board, everybody burns to death, and then you gain lots of life. It is also a zombie, so it is recastable with our commander. Whew. And that does it for the core of the deck. We are trying to burn our opponents out and also engage in lots of evasive, menacing combat with our zombies. We are hoping to chip our opponents down bit by bit until finally they fall down and die. In an ideal world, we should be able to have a mass of zombie tokens and a mass of zombies repeatedly making their way onto the board as the game goes forward. But we do still need to make sure that we can draw into our zombie cards, and self-mill isn't enough to get us there. So let's talk about our draw package. We're going to be running a 10-card draw package today with the self-mill, and this should allow us to churn through our deck pretty quickly. So let's begin with Corpse Augur. Whenever this dies, we draw X cards and lose X life, where X is the number of creature cards in any one player's graveyard. Typically, it's going to be us that we pick, but, sometimes somebody else might have milled better than we did. Liliana's Standard Bearer touches the battlefield at instant speed and gives us X cards, where X is the number of creatures that died this turn. So after a board wipe, cast Liliana's Standard Bearer and reap all the benefits. Vampiric Rites lets us sacrifice our zombies to draw cards. Archghoul of Thraben says if it or another zombie we control dies, we can look at the top card of our library, and if it is a zombie card, we can reveal it and put it into our hand. If we don't, we are allowed to put it into our graveyard. And since our deck consists of 31 zombies, we have a 1 in 3 chance every time this triggers to just get a free draw out of it. Midnight Reaper lets us draw a card every time one of our zombies that's not a token dies. War in Heaven draws us 3 cards, then mills us 3 cards, and then lets us reanimate a lot of things from the graveyard. Undead Augur lets us draw a card every time a zombie dies. Read the Bones lets us scry 2, draw 2, then lose 2 life. Sign in Blood lets us draw 2 and lose 2 life, but it says target player, so this actually has the utility of the Fell Stinger as well. We can use this to aim it at an opponent and let them draw 2 cards and then die to the 2 damage, if they happen to have low enough life. Then we have the Custody Lich. When it enters the battlefield, we become the Monarch, and whenever we become the Monarch, we can force a player to sacrifice a creature. This will not only incentivize people to engage in combat, but it will de-incentivize people from engaging in combat with us, because if they take the Monarch from us, we get a free sack trigger when we steal it back from them with our superior army of zombie tokens. And that really does it for all the zombies we got here that are drawing us cards, and all the sorceries and instants that are drawing us cards. I don't know why I said zombies first. That was a weird slip of the tongue. Anyway, I'm probably just kind of sick. Let's talk about removing our opponent's things from the battlefield, because I need something to bring me joy. We're going to be running a 10-card removal package here, especially because we can recur some of our removal that are zombies here. But we do have some non-zombies that do removal as well, like Royal Assassin, which lets us blow up any tapped creature, basically on repeat. This will force our opponents to always be at a disadvantage when they engage in combat. My favorite card in Magic the Gathering, Meteor Golem, is here to blow up any problematic card on the board. This is here because we struggle to get rid of artifacts in our deck, and we can easily reanimate this with a Victimize or other card so that we are never actually paying that exorbitant mana cost. Soul Shackling Zombie says whenever it enters, we can exile 2 cards from a graveyard, and then we make every opponent burn for 2, and we gain 2 life when we do that. Ghastly Death Tyrant can get rid of enchantments on every player's battlefield, or just one player's battlefield. Sorry, it's the non-skeleton version that does this effect. But yeah, this Beholder blows up a specific enchantment and opponent controls, and then we lose life equal to that card's mana value. Then we have Breathe Your Last, which can blow up a creature or a planeswalker, and then we gain 1 life for every one of its colors. Accursed Marauder is a zombie that we can recast from the graveyard to make every player sacrifice a non-token creature. Consuming Corruption can be used to deal X damage to a creature and give us X life, where X is the amount of swamps we have. Fleshbag Marauder is effectively the same as the Accursed Marauder, but it doesn't dodge tokens. Then we have Tendrils of Corruption, which does the same thing as the Consuming Corruption, and it just costs a little more mana. Then we have Feed the Swarm to blow up any enchantment or a creature, and then we lose life equal to that card's mana value. But we also need to make sure that we have ways to clear the entire board of threats, so we'll get rid of all creatures with Necromantic Selection and reanimate any 1 creature when we do that. We also have an Oblivion Stone, which we can use to blow up all cards on the board that are not lands. I'm beginning to really warm up to Oblivion Stone as an option for non-white decks to blow up every other card type, because white has the opportunity to do that with cards like Austere Command and Farewell and Ondu Inversion, but every other color has access to Oblivion Stone, meaning nobody can say that they don't have access to good board wipes. They literally have one right here. It can even save their commander if they want to be a little slow with the card. It's just a really fantastic board wipe. But getting rid of your opponent's cards is only part of the strategy. We still need to be able to ramp up into some of our more expensive zombies. So let's go ahead and talk mana. We're going to be running 10 ramp spells here, and we're not going to go much higher than that because we really don't have that high of mana costs in our deck for the majority of it. So let's go ahead and go into each of these. We have a Heraldic Banner, as it allows us to give all of our zombies 1/0, and it can also add a mana of any color. A Worn Power Stone gives us a really good mana efficient rock for getting into bigger plays like our 5-cost enchantments. Planar Atlas allows us to stack a land on the top of our deck while also being a 2-mana rock. Charcoal Diamond, Fractured Power Stone, and Mind Stone are all 2-mana rocks, with Mind Stone having the benefit of being able to sacrifice it to draw a card. Wayfarer's Bauble can be sacrificed to grab a land out of the deck. Then we have Honored Heirloom, which can be used to get rid of any problematic creature in an opponent's graveyard. Bonder's Ornament, which can be ramp early and draw late, and Unstable Obelisk, which is ramp early and a removal spell later in the game. Which, again, I think that people really do not like cards like Unstable Obelisk, but I feel like they do their job very well, especially for budget decks. Then we have some Win Connie stuff. Lands. Lands are a win condition, I promise you. If you have enough lands, you can cast spells, and if you have enough lands to cast spells, you're probably winning more games. So we are running 35 lands, 27 of them are swamps, with 8 of these being utility lands. Volatile Fault to get rid of people's lands, Pit of Offerings to get rid of people's graveyards, Encroaching Waste to get rid of people's lands, Throne of the High City to let us have extra draw with Monarch, Ominous Cemetery to get rid of problematic creatures, Path of Ancestry to strap Scry onto all of our creature summons, Crystal Grotto to strap Scry onto a land drop, and Myriad Landscape to allow us to ramp early on in the game. And that does it for everything the deck has in it. Now all that's left to do is talk about how to actually play the damn thing. Alrighty, let's go ahead and talk Keepable Hands. I'm gonna be honest, as long as you've got some way to mill things into the graveyard and you've got a pretty good set of lands and ramp in the opening hand, I think you'll be golden. In our opening hand, we've got a Myriad Landscape and a Swamp, so we've got 2 lands, and we have a Planner Atlas to set up our 3rd land. An Honored Heirloom for the following turn, a Corpse Churn to mill 3 cards into the graveyard as quick as possible, we have a Board Wipe in case things go south, and a Meteor Golem to handle problematic cards. We're actually in a pretty good spot, so we'll go ahead and open and draw our Mind Stone, drop a Myriad Landscape on the board, and then move into turn 2. We'll drop a Swamp onto the board, and we're going to go ahead and tap 2 and play that Planner Atlas, letting us look at the top 4 cards of our graveyard and stack a land on top. We see that there are no lands on top, so we go ahead and just throw those all to the bottom, and we've just saved ourselves 4 draws of nothing. We move into the next turn. We have a Scourge of Neltoth. We're going to go ahead and tap 2. You know what? Honestly, I want to play the Mind Stone, but I think the correct move is to crack the Myriad Landscape and go ahead and get some swamps out of our deck. This will make up for the land drop that we are missing, and we'll shuffle the cards that we just got scried to the bottom, so we'll have a better turn 4. We move into turn 4, and there's our land. We're in a better spot now. So now we have a couple of options. We can either do a big turn of ramp or get the commander out. I'm going to be honest, I don't think we actually care about the commander right now. So we're going to pay 1, 2, 3, get the Honored Heirloom out, and we can even cast the commander here if we so chose, but we don't have a graveyard to really worry with right now. So we just say, hey, we've ramped a bunch, we're going to go ahead and pass to y'all. We move into our next turn. Here's a Ghastly Death Tyrant, and we have enough lands to go ahead and just reset everybody's boards right now. We had a couple turns of doing nothing. We're going to use Necromantic Selection to punish our opponents for having the audacity to play Magic the Gathering without us, and that will give us a creature from our opponent. We're just going to go ahead and use the Zombie Berserker to denote that we stole a creature from an opponent, likely one of their commanders. We move into our next turn, and there's a Wayfarer's Bauble. Let's go ahead and see what we can do. Players have started to reset their boards now, so let's start playing along with them. We're going to go ahead and get that Scourge of Clan Neltoth out, and we are going to aim our friend's commander that we stole at their noggin. We move into turn 7, and we've got another ramp piece, and very likely the commander we stole will be gone, and our Scourge of Neltoth will very likely be gone. Nobody will let us keep that after we board wiped everybody. So let's go ahead and pay 1, 2, 3, get the Bonder's Ornament out. 1, let's play the Wayfarer's Bauble. 2, crack the Wayfarer's Bauble. 1, 2, let's go ahead and get Zul Ashur on the board while we grab this swamp out of our deck so that we are ready to go for our following turns. Now we move into turn 8. We finally casted our commander. Let's go ahead and play a swamp. Now, we've got a Scourge of Clan Neltoth in the grave that we can use, but we want to see if there's any other moves we might get access to. So let's go ahead and Corpse Churn to mill 1, 2, 3 cards, and that actually worked out decently well for us. We managed to get a Dread Return into the grave, which will be very helpful later, and we've got a Liliana's Standard Bearer in the grave, which we can use in a bit. For now, though, let's see here. We'll put the Liliana's Standard Bearer in our hand, and we'll tap our commander, and we're going to go ahead and reanimate that Scourge of Clan Neltoth so that we've got a threatening creature on the board ready to start swinging at our opponents. We don't have any land open after this, but we do have a 6/6 dragon, and our opponents have only had 2 turns to stack creatures on the battlefield, so we're not in a bad spot. We move into the next turn, and we have a Gray Merchant of Asphodel. Let's go ahead and look at what options we have here. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 mana, and we would need 11 mana to play Gary and a follow-up move. So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and pay 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We're going to use the Bonder's Ornament to draw a card, and then we're going to pay 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 and put Gary on the board. We don't care if Gary dies because we can recast him with our commander, but we are burning our opponents for a combined total right now of 15, gaining us 15 life. Any damage that we've taken in the last few turns has been reset back to us. Now we move into combat. We're going to go ahead and punch somebody with a Scourge of Clan Neltoth, and we will move into the next turn. We have a Victimize here ready to use to reanimate cards, and looking at our graveyard, let's go ahead and see here, we have 0 creatures in the graveyard at this moment because we haven't grabbed many self-mill cards. But that doesn't mean that we are out of options. We can go ahead and play the Meteor Golem now to get rid of a problematic card on the board. It costs 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And we have 3 mana available as well. Let's say we killed a creature. We're going to go ahead and put the Royal Assassin on the board on top of that. Now we have a repeatable way to get rid of problematic cards, and we are still the aggro in whatever match we are in because we can just keep on punching with our Scourge of Clan Neltoth and our Gary. If an opponent blocks the Gary, we just recast the Gary, and things will go well for us. Now we move into the final turn we're going to work with, and we have an Undead Augur we can play. So let's go ahead and drop that down. And if we had a way to sacrifice creatures right now, we could sack the Gary and then pull him back out for a big burn turn. But instead, we're just going to go ahead and remove a problematic enchantment from our opponent's boards and keep stacking up a big board. Our hope is that eventually our opponents are going to be forced to board wipe us, in which case we would just drop down the Liliana Standard Bearer. In that case, we wouldn't be dropping down our Undead Augur. We would just be leaving mana open so that our opponents will say, hey, let's blow up all the cards on this player's board. And we go, oh, that's perfectly fine. We drop the Standard Bearer out in response to all of our cards going to the graveyard. And since all of our cards went to the graveyard, we draw that many cards because it counts our opponent's cards as well. Then after doing that, when our turn comes up, we would just do whatever the hell we want. I would begin with casting Victimize and getting 2 creatures out of the grave, and then maybe even using those creatures to do other things. But we have a giant hand the minute an opponent responds to our big and giant board state, which it's the Faustron bargain we get to put players in here. If they kill all of our cards, we can just reanimate them. And in an actual game, it's very likely our cards are going to be getting removed bit by bit, so we're going to keep recasting them with our commander. Hitting our commander causes people to lose 2 life because of its ward ability, which gets them chip damage further and further for the burn strategy of our zombie deck. All things considered, this deck should play incredibly smoothly when there is another person removing your cards from the board. And if they're not removing your cards from the board, they're just losing their life total bit by bit. Make them make choices. Now, as you saw during the gameplay section, one of the side effects of playing this deck in budget form is not having as many consistent ways to throw things into the graveyard. And since we don't have access to blue or red, we don't have all of the powerful looter effects that we otherwise would normally have. And without access to green, we don't get things like Grizzly Salvage and Old Stick Fingers. But we can add cards like Dread Summons into the deck if you so choose. Each player mills X cards, and for each creature milled this way, we will make a 2/2 black creature token that is a zombie. This not only gives us plenty of zombies, but it also gives us the ability to make sure that we have our important cards in the graveyard. A Buried Alive would also be a wonderful include as you are increasing the deck's budget count. Then we also have cards like Headless Rider, which can give us access to more zombie tokens throughout the game. Endless Ranks of the Dead will also give you access to plenty more zombie tokens. You can also add in Lord of the Undead, Death Baron, and Zombie Tyrant and Diregraph Colossus to benefit you from being a zombie deck. Most of the cards I named give all of your zombies +1/+1, but the Diregraph Colossus allows us to do zombie token shenanigans galore every time we cast a zombie spell. We can also make sure that the removal package of the deck is fleshed out with a Withering Torment instead of the Beholder skeleton we are running right now. It'll lower the mana curve of the deck, and even though we can't reanimate the Withering Torment, it will still do plenty of work for us. Then we can make sure that we can sacrifice our creatures way easier by adding in a Warren Soul Trader or a Liliana the Dreadhorde General, and she also has the ability to generate us tokens. Our ramp package can also be supplemented with a Jet Medallion and a Bontu's Monument, discounting all of our creatures and also adding burn to our ramp package. And finally, a Undead War Chief gives us the best of all worlds by letting us have zombies that have +2/+1 and also lowers their mana cost. Overall, this is a deck that I think will work perfectly fine at its budget value, but the absolute nanosecond you take it from a $15 deck to a $20 deck, the deck's power almost doubles because you gain access to cards that I was not able to fit in the original budget that still do a lot of work. The Buried Alive and Dread Summons being huge upgrades for the deck, and making sure that you've got access to those will smooth things out incredibly, making it so you don't have to rely on your opponents removing your stuff as you threaten their faces over and over and over again. That all said, hopefully you guys did enjoy this deck still. I wanted to go ahead and make Zul Ashur because 2-mana commanders are really, really fun, and a 2-mana commander that lets us just reanimate zombies all the time feels absolutely perfect. So let me know what you guys think in the comment section below. Hit the like button if you haven't already, subscribe if you haven't already, and as always, everybody, insert end of video tagline here.
Hey, just wanted to give a quick thank you to all of my wonderful patrons who help keep me afloat and help keep this channel going. YouTube and Twitch are wonderful platforms, but at the end of the day, stability is not one of their strong suits. If you want to support my channel, then obviously Patreon is one of the best ways of doing that. Link is in the description. But I do want to personally thank everybody who has contributed to the channel. Those people would be Red Joker, Purple Poundini, Jemshin, Britzkrieg, Jupe the Malignant, Michael, Ravalern, Mabbity Babbity, Astral Frontier, Autumn and Angel, Nixie Chan, Agamotto, Victorian Alchemist, I'm not saying the last part of that, and you know that, Arcton Arclacier, Kiratorian, Dren Hadamata, Jordan M, John L, Lord Bleck, Smiling Game Master, and Fire Shard. And everyone else who supports my channel and lets me do what I do full time. This is a dream job of mine that I never believed that I would be able to take full time, and with your help, I've been able to do it. So thank you so very much for that. Thank you for watching the video. I hope you all enjoy, and I hope you all are having a wonderful time. I will see you all in the next one, hopefully.